Legendary ACDC guitarist and co-founder Angus Young has broken long-held stereotypes by discussing his tumultuous relationship with renowned frontman Bon Scott today. Scott embodies the early raw spirit of ACDC with his strong vocals and untamed personality. On the other hand, Scott was a complex man, charismatic yet prone to outbursts, behind the scenes, as Young shows. A guy whose creativity frequently collided with his demons is depicted in Young's unvarnished reflections. An epic tale fit for the epic music they composed together. Imagine two youthful rock stars leading a revolution, bringing an electric energy to every show, but frequently butting heads behind closed doors. A gift and a struggle. According to Angus Young, his connection with Bon Scott is. Their unmistakable connection on stage ignited crowds and catapulted ACDC to international superstardom. Offstage, though, Scott's erratic behavior regularly caused friction between the band members. There were innumerable occasions, according to Young, when Scott's inflated personality veered into anarchy. Imagine the band, all pumped up and ready to relax after a high-energy performance, when Scott vanishes into thin air, leaving his bandmates to tidy up the aftermath. Young, who was more self-controlled and concerned with ACDC's future success, and his heavy drinking and impulsive personality frequently clashed. The fact that he was unbeatable, as Young conceded, also made him impossible to stop at times. On the set of Highway to Hell, the anxiety was at an all-time high. Although Scott's vocals were the driving force behind the album, his unpredictable studio antics drove everyone crazy. The band's once unbreakable bond was weakened by arguments about Scott's drinking habits, punctuality, and creative direction. It was a mixed bag for Young, seeing Scott's genius while also dealing with the mayhem it frequently spawned. Bon Scott was both the most dynamic and vital part of ACDC's raw energy, a paradox that frequently put the band on the brink of anarchy. Just picture it. ACDC's charismatic leader is incredibly unpredictable, and the two brothers, Angus and Malcolm, are laser-focused on their goal of becoming the world's most dominant music group. Scott was more than simply the main singer. He was a whirlwind, a man whose unexpected actions could ruin all their hard work, yet whose irresistible presence could electrify audiences. Phil Rudd, the drummer, and Mark Evans, the bassist, were becoming increasingly irritated by Scott's unpredictable behavior. Scott was like a human cyclone, according to Rudd, who was famous for his unwavering rhythms and calm demeanor. He could amaze at one moment and destroy at the next. Imagine this. The band is back from a string of shows and eager to get their sound down in the studio, but Scott is either late or doesn't show up at all, leaving them smelling like they had too much to drink the night before. Rudd and Evans saw Scott's lack of commitment to band practice as more than simply an irritant. It was a danger to the group's unity. The group dynamic became increasingly tense as ACDC's aspirations rose. The band's razor-sharp sound was created by Angus and Malcolm, who insisted on discipline and accuracy, which frequently clashed with Scott's carefree attitude. Scott's brilliance was in the way he could transform his untamed energy into thrilling live performances and sharp, streetwise songwriting. However, it was also this same spirit that made him fight against the order that the Young brothers were attempting to establish. Think of all the fights that would have broken out between Scott, a man who lived life according to his own rules, and Angus, who was just out of his teens, as they argued about everything from being on time to the quality of their performances. Not even the band's management could escape Scott's pranks. Administrators who had painstakingly built ACDC's reputation as a no-nonsense rock band frequently found themselves rushing to manage the consequences of Scott's erratic conduct. Picture all the desperate attempts to rectify Scott's tarnished reputation that ensued from his inebriated antics, including the frantic phone calls to venues. The management team saw Scott's flamboyant personality to be an asset and a liability. Offstage, his magnetism attracted thousands of fans, and on stage, he was unstoppable. His actions were about to derail the band's rising star power, and he was a walking time bomb. In the face of insurmountable odds, the band remained united by an indisputable truth: Scott's unparalleled talent. His lyrical wit and gritty, soulful voice were the foundation of ACDC's early success, and not even his detractors in the band could dispute this. There was a mesmerizing performance, a song that encapsulated the unadulterated fury of rock and roll, for every inebriated brawl or skipped rehearsal. Scott had a significant influence. The band had to find a way to embrace his wild genius while still controlling the mayhem it frequently caused. A defining element of ACDC's early years was the conflict that existed inside the band during Scott's stay, rather than a collection of isolated episodes. Their personal demons and their common goal of rock supremacy propelled them to superstardom. Scott may have been a source of stress and chaos, but he was also a driving force that helped the band reach new heights while testing their boundaries. He had explosive and unforgettable dynamics with his bandmates, and their disagreements were more than simply roadblocks. They were fuel for the fire that formed ACDC's identity. Bon Scott was a man of contrasting qualities outside of ACDC. He could captivate an audience with his charisma, but he was also deeply troubled by his personal demons. Imagine a rock star who is both adored and utterly alone, despite being in the company of countless admirers. He was a guy torn between the colossal image he portrayed and the fears he could never fully overcome. His problems lingered even in the face of millions of admirers. His relationships were a mess. He fought addiction, and his anger was violent. Scott's drinking quickly became a harmful addiction, despite its innocent beginnings as a means to relax after thrilling performances. Envision a man whose voice embodied the unfiltered strength of defiance. Consider the irony. Destroyed by the way of life he represented. After what began as joyous toasts with fans turned into all-night binges, Scott woke up emotionally and physically exhausted. While everyone else adored him, he was tortured by doubts and self-doubt, and he hid them behind his alcoholism. The shadowy side of Scott's difficulties was exposed on that notorious night in London in 1976. A full-blown altercation escalated from a small quarrel at a packed bar. As Scott's larger-than-life image takes a darker and more perilous turn, his rage and alcohol-induced swagger fuel the mayhem. Picture bottles breaking, yells erupting, and Scott smack dab in the thick of it all. The episode gained him attention and portrayed him as a rock and roll rebel. But beyond his bluster was a man struggling to control his own vices. Scott saw in these violent tantrums more than just defiance. He saw screams for assistance from a guy struggling with concerns he couldn't put into words. Even Scott's personal relationships were full of ups and downs. His love relationships were intense and short-lived, full of dramatic highs and crushing lows. His wild energy and magnetic demeanor drew numerous women, but they soon learned of his shadow side. His partners frequently left him because of his instability and excessive drinking. Imagine the anguish that would engulf a lady who fell for Scott's charisma but was disappointed by the anarchy that ensued after him. Scott felt guilty and ashamed about his self-destructive tendencies, which were reflected in his unsuccessful relationships. As he continued his descent, even his most devoted followers were unable to stop him. As he fluctuated between bouts of genius and misery, his admirers and confidants who valued his intelligence and charm frequently felt helpless to stop him. Scott's life apart from the band was a never-ending roller coaster of highs and lows, joy and tragedy. His ambivalence served as an inspiration to people around him, while simultaneously making them sad for the man he may have been had he conquered his demons. Beyond the mayhem at ACDC, Bon Scott's life outside of work exemplified a man in conflict with himself, caught between his passion for life and his destructive habits. The darker forces that molded his story were unaffected by his evident charisma, wit, and talent. There was a cost to every victory, and a grin belied a pain. And every explosive episode betrays an underlying conflict. His life outside of the band was characterized by extreme volume, while frequently precariously balanced on the brink of collapse, leaving an impression of tragedy-tempered brightness. Angus Young's discoveries have shed new light on Bon Scott's life, revealing the paradox of a guy whose incomparable rock music talents are overshadowed by the shadow of his personal troubles. Anxieties, frustrations, and heartbreak challenged the band's mettle for every thrilling performance. A tale of both success and failure, Scott's life serves as a cautionary tale about the fine line that separates talent from madness. He was a guy whose demons eventually engulfed him, yet his voice lives on as an emblem of ACDC's incredible ascension. Angus Young's contemplations do not lessen Scott's impact. Rather, they enrich it by revealing a man who was multifaceted, much like the music he composed. A rock star who lived and died onto his own terms. Bon Scott's life mirrored the honesty and authenticity of his music. His tragic but magnificent legacy lives on in the hearts of music lovers everywhere, reminding us of the strength and vulnerability of the human soul.